Hello, boys and girls. It's Mr. Farnworth here. It's Monday, November 16th. I'd like to start this video by just apologizing for all of my absences this week. Trust me, this is not a time that I would want to be missing so much school, but some things are out of our control. So let's do our best with these videos and see how these next couple days go. And then we'll revisit on Wednesday if this is a platform that we want to move forward with on Thursday and Friday. Right out of the gate, I got to make sure that my expectations are clear. Please be respectful towards the substitute. Watch this entire video. You may take breaks, of course, but whatever you don't finish in class, you have to finish for homework. This video isn't too long, so you should have plenty of time to get through it, but make sure that you're completing all the worksheets that I give you and all the activities that I have you do. You should treat this class just like any other class, except I'm not there. I'm simply a video giving you your instructions. This week, I want to dive into the world of Pixar. We've all seen Pixar movies like Toy Story, Bugs Life, Finding Nemo, Monsters Incorporated, etc., etc. But I want to watch some Pixar short films and see if we can analyze those short films the same way that we do our short stories. But first, I have a do now for you that I want you to complete. I want you to listen to the instructions that I give you and then pause the video and make sure you give yourself enough time to write. What you're going to do for your do now today is this. In a paragraph, write a full paragraph. I want you to tell me what Pixar movie is your favorite and explain why. I could tell you that my favorite Pixar movie is Toy Story. I watched it as a kid, and growing up it's been one of my favorite movies of all time. I want to know what your favorite Pixar movie is, and I want you to tell me why. As you're writing this, I want you to think about storytelling. Think about what makes these films so enjoyable. What does Pixar do in their movies that captures us as an audience and makes us watch them over and over and over again? I want you to give yourself 5 minutes to complete this. You should pause this video right now, get writing for 5 minutes, and then press play again. Now that you have finished your do now, I want to introduce you to a man named Andrew Stanton. Andrew Stanton is probably one of my favorite writers. If I was going to change jobs with anybody, there isn't many people I would do that with because I get to hang out with you guys every day. But if I was to change jobs with anybody, I very well might change jobs with Andrew Stanton. He's the lead writer, producer, and director for Pixar. He wrote all 3 of the Toy Story films. He wrote Finding Nemo, WALL-E, A Bug's Life. He's currently working on Finding Dory, which is the Finding Nemo sequel. And he has numerous awards for his work writing and directing these films. He's actually from Massachusetts, which I find really interesting. Any of us can grow up to be Andrew Stanton if we want to. He has a TED Talk that's called Clues to Good Storytelling that I'm going to show you right now. As we're watching this TED Talk together, what I want you to do is make sure you have this worksheet in front of you. You should follow along with the TED Talk and make sure you answer all of these questions to the best of your ability. I've put timestamps in here. Like this first question is at 1 minute and 18 seconds. The second question is at 2 minutes and 5 seconds. You should make sure that you're following along to the video. And when these timestamps come up, be sure that you're answering the questions that it asks. Here is our video. It is called Clues to Great Storytelling. We're going to watch the whole thing together, and I'm going to make sure that I continue to move my mouse around so that you can see the timestamps at the bottom. So make sure you're watching this video closely. It's a great TED Talk. Listen to everything that Andrew Stanton has to say and answer the questions on your worksheet. Be sure that as you're watching this, you're thinking about storytelling, thinking about your story, the short stories that you're writing, and how you can take the advice that Andrew Stanton gives you and make your story better. So I'm going to get this started. Please pay attention and do your best with the questions on that worksheet.
Storytelling is joke telling. It's knowing your punchline, your ending, knowing that everything you're saying from the first sentence to the last is leading to a singular goal, and ideally confirming some truth that deepens our understandings of who we are as human beings. We all love stories. We're born for them. Stories affirm who we are. We all want affirmations that our lives have meaning. And nothing does a greater affirmation than when we connect through stories. It can cross the barriers of time, past, present, and future, and allow us to experience the similarities between ourselves and through others, real and imagined. The children's television host, Mr. Rogers, always carried in his wallet a quote from a social worker that said, "Frankly, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard their story." And the way I like to interpret that is probably the most greatest story commandment, which is, make me care. Please, emotionally, intellectually, aesthetically, just make me care. We all know what it's like to not care. You've gone through hundreds of TV channels, just switching channel after channel, and then suddenly you actually stop on one. It's already halfway over, but something's caught you, and you're drawn in, and you care. That's not by chance, that's by design. So it got me thinking, what if I told you my history was a story? How I was born for it. How I learned along the way this subject matter. And to make it more interesting, we'll start from the ending, and we'll go to the beginning. And so if I were going to give you the ending of this story, it would go something like this. And that's what ultimately led me to speaking to you here at TED about story. And the most current story lesson that I've had was completing the film I've just done this year in 2012. The film is John Carter. It's based on a book called A Princess of Mars, which was written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And Edgar Rice Burroughs actually put himself as a character inside this movie and is the narrator. And he's summoned by his rich uncle, John Carter, to his mansion with a telegram saying, "See me at once." But once he gets there, he's found out that his uncle has mysteriously passed away and been entombed in a mausoleum on the property.
You won't find a keyhole. Thing only opens from the inside. He insisted. No embalming, an open coffin, no funeral. Ah, you don't acquire the kind of wealth your uncle commanded by being like the rest of us, huh? Come, let's go inside.
What this scene is doing, and it did in the book, is it's fundamentally making a promise. It's making a promise to you that this story will lead somewhere that's worth your time. And that's what all good stories should do at the beginning, is they should give you a promise. You could do it in an infinite amount of ways. Sometimes it's as simple as once upon a time. These Carter books always had Edgar Rice Burroughs as a narrator in it, and I always thought it was such a fantastic device. It's like a guy inviting you around the campfire, or somebody in a bar saying, "Here, let me tell you a story. It didn't happen to me, it happened to somebody else, but it's going to be worth your time." A well-told promise is like a pebble being pulled back in a slingshot and propels you forward through the story to the end. In 2008, I pushed all the theories that I had on story at the time to the limits of my understanding on this project. Storytelling without dialogue. It's the purest form of cinematic storytelling. It's the most inclusive approach you can take. It confirms something I really had a hunch on, is that the audience actually wants to work for their meal. They just don't want to know that they're doing that. That's your job as a storyteller, is to hide the fact that you're making them work for their meal. We're born problem solvers. We're compelled to deduce and to deduct, because that's what we do in real life. It's this well-organized absence of information that draws us in. There's a reason that we're all attracted to an infant or a puppy. It's not just that they're damn cute. It's because they can't completely express what they're thinking and what their intentions are. And it's like a magnet. We can't stop ourselves from wanting to complete the sentence and fill it in. I first started really understanding this storytelling device when I was writing with Bob Peterson on Finding Nemo, and we would call this the unifying theory of 2 + 2. Make the audience put things together. Don't give them 4, give them 2 + 2. The elements you provide and the order you place them in is crucial to whether you succeed or fail at engaging the audience. Editors and screenwriters have known this all along. It's the invisible application that holds our attention to story. I don't mean to make it sound like this is an actual exact science. It's not. That's what's so special about stories. They're not a widget. They aren't exact. Stories are inevitable if they're good, but they're not predictable. I took a seminar in this year with an acting teacher named Judith Weston, and I learned a key insight to character. She believed that all well-drawn characters have a spine. And the idea is that the character has an inner motor, a dominant, unconscious goal that they're striving for, an itch that they can't scratch. She gave a wonderful example of Michael Corleone, Al Pacino's character in The Godfather, and that probably his spine was to please his father. And it's something that always drove all his choices. Even after his father died, he was still trying to scratch that itch. I took to this like a duck to water. Wally's was to find the beauty. Marlin's, the father in Finding Nemo, was to prevent harm. And Woody's was to do what was best for his child. And these spines don't always drive you to make the best choices. Sometimes you can make some horrible choices with them. I'm really blessed to be a parent, and watching my children grow, I really firmly believe that you're born with a temperament, and you're wired a certain way, and you don't have any say about it. And there's no changing it. All you can do is learn to recognize it and own it. And some of us are born with temperaments that are positive, some are negative, but a major threshold is passed when you mature enough to acknowledge what drives you and to take the wheel and steer it. As parents, you're always learning who your children are, they're learning who they are, and you're still learning who you are. So we're all learning all the time. And that's why change is fundamental in story. If things go static, stories die, because life is never static. In 1998, I had finished writing Toy Story and A Bug's Life, and I was completely hooked on screenwriting. So I wanted to become much better at it and learn anything I could. So I researched everything I possibly could, and I finally came across this fantastic quote by a British playwright, William Archer. "Drama is anticipation mingled with uncertainty." It's an incredibly insightful definition. When you're telling a story, have you constructed anticipation? In the short term, have you made me want to know what will happen next? But more importantly, have you made me want to know how it will all conclude in the long term? Have you constructed honest conflicts with truth that creates doubt in what the outcome might be? An example would be in Finding Nemo. In the short tension, you were always worried, would Dory's short-term memory forget whatever she was being told by Marlin? But under that was this global tension of, will we ever find Nemo in this huge, vast ocean? In our earliest days at Pixar, before we truly understood the invisible workings of story, we were simply a group of guys just going on our gut, going on our instincts. And it's interesting to see how that led us places that were actually pretty good. You got to remember that in this time of year, 1993, what was considered a successful animated picture was Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. So when we pitched Toy Story to Tom Hanks for the first time, he walked in and he said, "You don't want me to sing, do you?" And I thought that epitomized perfectly what everybody thought animation had to be at the time. But we really wanted to prove that you could tell stories completely different in animation. So we didn't have any influence then, so we had a little secret list of rules that we kept to ourselves, and they were no songs, no I want moment, no happy village, no love story. And the irony is that in the first year, our story was not working at all, and Disney was panicking. So they privately got advice from a famous lyricist, who I won't name, and he faxed them some suggestions, and we got a hold of that fax. And the fax said there should be songs, there should be an I Want song, there should be a Happy Village song, there should be a love story, and there should be a villain. And thank goodness we were just too young, rebellious, and contrarian at the time. That just gave us more determination to prove that you could build a better story. And a year after that, we did conquer it. And it just went to prove that storytelling has guidelines, not hard, fast rules. Another fundamental thing we learned was about liking your main character. And we had naively thought, well, Woody in Toy Story has to become selfless at the end, so you got to start from someplace, so let's make him selfish. And this is what you get.
What do you think you're doing? Off the bed. Hey, off the bed!
You gonna make us, Woody?
No, he is. Slinky! Slinky! Get up here and do your job! Are you deaf? I said take care of them!
I'm sorry, Woody, but I have to agree with them. I don't think what you did was right.
What? Am I hearing correctly? You don't think I was right? Who said your job was to think, Spring Wiener?
Why?
How do you make a selfish character likable? We realized, well, you can make him kind, generous, funny, considerate, as long as one condition is met for him, is that he stays the top toy. And that's what it really is that we all live life conditionally. We're all willing to play by the rules and follow things along as certain conditions are met. After that, all bets are off. Before I'd even decided to make storytelling my career, I can now see key things that happened in my youth that really sort of opened my eyes to certain things about story. In 1986, I truly understood the notion of story having a theme. And that was the year that they restored and re-released Lawrence of Arabia. And I saw that thing 7 times in 1 month. I couldn't get enough of it. I could just tell there was a grand design under it. There was, in every shot, every scene, every line. Yet on the surface, it just seemed to be depicting his historical lineage of what went on. Yet there was something more being said. What exactly was it? And it wasn't until on one of my later viewings that the veil was lifted, and it was in a scene where he's walked across the Sinai Desert and he's reached the Suez Canal, and I suddenly got it. That was the theme. Who are you? Here were all these seemingly disparate events and dialogues that just were chronologically telling the history of him, but underneath it was a constant, a guideline, a roadmap. Everything Lawrence did in that movie was an attempt for him to figure out where his place was in the world. A strong theme is always running through a well-told story. When I was 5, I was introduced to possibly the most major ingredient that I feel a story should have, but is rarely invoked. And this is what my mother took me to when I was 5.
Come on, it's all right. Look, the water is stiff. Some fun, huh, Bambi? Come on, get up, like this. No.
I walked out of there wide-eyed with wonder. And that's what I think the magic ingredient is, the secret sauce, is can you invoke wonder? Wonder is honest, it's completely innocent, it can't be artificially evoked. For me, there's no greater ability than the gift of another human being giving you that feeling. To hold them still just for a brief moment in their day and have them surrender to wonder. When it's tapped, the affirmation of being alive, it reaches you almost to a cellular level. And when an artist does that to another artist, it's like you're compelled to pass it on. It's like a dormant command that's suddenly activated in you, like a call to Devil's Tower. Do unto others what's been done to you. The best stories infuse wonder. When I was 4 years old, I have a vivid memory of finding 2 pinpoint scars on my ankle and asking my dad what they were, and he said I had a matching pair like that on my head, but I couldn't see them because of my hair. And he explained that when I was born premature, that I came out much too early, and I wasn't fully baked. I was very, very sick. And that when the doctor took a look at this yellow kid with black teeth, he looked straight at my mom and said, "He's not going to live." And I was in the hospital for months. And many blood transfusions later, I lived. And that made me special. I don't know if I really believe that. I don't know if my parents really believe that. But I didn't want to prove them wrong. Whatever I ended up being good at, I would strive to be worthy of the second chance I was given.
There. It's okay. Daddy's here. Daddy's got you. I promise I will never let anything happen to you. Nemo.
And that's the first story lesson I ever learned. Use what you know. Draw from it. It doesn't always mean plot or fact. It means capturing a truth from your experiencing. Expressing values you personally feel deep down to your core. And that's what ultimately led me to speaking to you here at TED Talk today. Thank you.
Now, what I love so much about that TED Talk is the way that Stanton's really able to take these things that we know that we should make our readers care. We know that we should think about our ending as we're writing. We know all of these lessons, but I think he does a really good job at articulating it. What I want you to do right now is I want you to turn and talk to the person that's sitting next to you. They should be just about finishing up this video too. And I want you to talk for 5 minutes about this question. As young writers, what are some lessons that we can learn from Andrew's TED Talk that help us grow as storytellers? What I want you to do is I want you to pause this video. I want you to turn and talk to the person sitting next to you and answer the question that's on your screen right now. As young writers, what are some lessons we can learn from his TED Talk that can help us grow as storytellers? So pause this video and have a quick conversation, then come back and join me. Hopefully, in your conversation with the person sitting next to you, you touched upon some of these really great lessons that Andrew Stanton tells us. He tells us in the beginning to know your ending and make sure that your plot does too. Every line in your story, everything that happens in your story should have your ending in mind. And you should be sure that just like telling a joke, you are leading your audience towards this big ending. As you're doing it, you need to make sure that you make your reader care. Nothing's worse than reading a story that you don't really care about. Those are the kind of stories that you put down after the first few paragraphs. You need to make sure you make your reader care, and one way you do that is by making a promise at the beginning that the story will be worth it. He talked a little bit about 2 plus 2 and how he would rather give the audience 2 plus 2 than 4 because what he's doing is he's making the audience do the work. You don't just want to tell the audience that your character has a sort of personality trait. You want to have the audience figure that out for themselves by showing it to them as opposed to telling it to them. Make sure your characters have spines. He mentioned that every single character should have some force, some motivation inside them, something that they want to make sure that they complete, something that they get done. And you should be sure that all of your characters have these spines in them. We've talked a lot about theme this year. I've had you guys come up with what you want the theme to your story to be. You should be sure that your theme is present throughout the entire story. You should invoke wonder in your reader. Make your reader want to know what's going to happen and what's going on. And of course, this final lesson, which I think is probably the most important, is to use what you know. We've all lived our lives and we all have different experiences, and it's important that we take these experiences and we put them into our writing. Teach me something about your life experience that I may not have gotten to experience myself. All of these lessons are great, they're all really important, and these are all things that you guys should be keeping in mind as we are moving forward writing our own short stories. Think about these as you move forward. Now, for the rest of today's class, here's what I want you to do. I want you to open a Google Doc right now and create a document that's titled Your Name, Short Story 2015. I want you to begin to craft your exposition. Remember, the exposition is the beginning of our story where we're giving all of the relevant background information that we need. I need to know the setting, I need to know about my characters, I need to know who my protagonist is, and what's the conflict. Let's start to get towards our conflict. Our exposition should at least be 2 paragraphs long. That is at least. If I was writing a short story, my exposition would be a lot longer than that, probably close to 4 or 5 paragraphs, but I'm asking for at least 2, and make sure you include all of the relevant background information. You should work on this for the rest of today's class, but you don't have to finish it for homework because we are going to take some time to write in class tomorrow as well. So I'm not sure how much time you're going to have left at the end of this video, but for the rest of class, you should be crafting your exposition. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the TED Talk. I will see you on Wednesday, but you'll be hearing from me tomorrow. Have a great day.